Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. Tonight we are talking about flexible seating, and in particular I'm going to go over what it is and why you should try it out in your classroom and how to manage it and where to find flexible seating options on a budget, because sometimes that's important for everyone involved. So I want to show you just a few examples. If you have not seen flexible seating coming up, filling your Pinterest feed or filling every time you look up classroom layout or design ideas and inspirations on Google image search, you've probably seen a ton of flexible seating. I would say it's quite the popular thing to do nowadays. However, there's a lot of pictures of what these Pinterest-worthy flexible seating classrooms look like, but maybe not so much as to how to manage it and handle that and what that looks like. So today I'm going to go over, I have been using flexible seating in my classroom for a couple of years now. So I'm going to tell you why I do that and what benefit I am seeing from that as well. So if this is the first time you're catching me, my name is Patty. I am a 4-5 split grade teacher in Ontario, Canada, and I come live every single Monday night to talk about teaching, specifically teaching using inquiry-based teaching strategies so that you can try out some inquiry in your classroom and make teaching and learning maybe a little bit more fun and accessible and easy to do so that teaching doesn't necessarily need to feel quite so daunting all the time. So, flexible seating. What is it? Number one, flexible seating doesn't mean you need a couch in your room. Flexible seating is not about the furniture you have in your room. Flexible seating is about a mindset from you as a teacher. It is a shift in your mindset from moving where the teacher is in total control of where the students sit so that you can see them. They're all sitting in a desk. You know where they are, and the expectation that learning only truly happens when a student is sitting at a desk. It's shifting that mindset from that to the understanding that students are probably the best, or sometimes the best, able to determine where they work best, and allowing them the freedom, the flexibility, and the ability to move in a classroom to work in an area and in a way that might be a little less traditional than all students sitting at desks. So for me, one of the reasons why I really loved the idea of flexible seating started out with Kayla Delzer. Now, that's not her last name now because she was just recently married, but she on Instagram is Top Dog Teaching. Now, she's often talked about the Starbucks classroom. And although I'm not quite ready to go full Starbucks yet, the idea of giving my students choice and options on where they sit during independent work time sounded like the perfect solution that I was looking for to help some of my students that have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and those students that just simply need movement. Very active students, even without a diagnosis, often need the ability to move and transition. One of the fortunate things that I had happen early in my career is I worked at a school that had gendered intermediate classes. So they had a class of boys, a class of girls, and then a class that was combined gendered. And one of the research that we had to do a lot of research as a staff and learn more about how to teach different genders and what the research said behind that. And one of the things that it stated was that boys typically need a lot more movement than girls. However, because the teaching profession is predominantly made up by women, we set up our classrooms in a way that favors our own personal learning style and our needs. And we often don't acknowledge or don't understand the needs of different learners. And in many cases, that is what learning looks like for boys, and that they need a lot of extra movement. They need quicker transitions. They need to get to work right away. They don't want to talk a lot about it. So when I was faced with a classroom with quite a few students with attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, I knew I had a lot of boys. Predominantly, my classes are made up of boys. Generally, it's about 2/3 boys to 1/3 girls. And they're active boys. So I knew I needed something that I could build in movement in my day and build in transitions and that flexibility to not keep my students constantly attached to a desk as that being their only option for working. So that is why I use flexible seating. So it is become more necessary in my classroom. And I find it cuts down on classroom management issues. It cuts down on conflicts between peers, because I find that if students can simply just get up and move away from a friend, I don't necessarily have to be managing that conflict constantly. It also means that students can find alternate places in the classroom if they need a quiet space. And it really allows them to get to know themselves as learners through some of our conversation circles, to get them to understand what type of environment they need to create for themselves in order to be most successful. So for a lot, it still means they're sitting at their desk or table in my case. But for others, it means that they're lying down on my carpet, they're sitting on our flexible seating options in the classroom, but there is a lot more options for them. And that choice and the transition from students, the thought of students can only work when they're sitting at their desks, to students need to have some type of autonomy to decide what's going to work best for them. That's the difference between a traditional seating arrangement in a classroom and a flexible one. It really is less about the furniture you have and more about your mindset. When I first started with flexible seating, I literally just had a carpet and some of those foam squares that students could move around the classroom. And I still had just as much flexible seating as I currently have now, except that now I just have more furniture options and I have more places to sit, but I still have the same mindset of what flexible seating looks like in my classroom. So the big question, how to manage it? Well, it really comes down to, there's kind of 3 different levels of flexible seating that you can use in your classroom, and what you choose will totally depend on the kids you have in front of you, as well as your own comfort level. And I always think to start, if you're really used to teacher control and a lot of teacher direction in your classroom, which is totally okay, that you've got to start slowly. So the 3 different levels of flexible seating, as I look at, there is a highly structured flexible seating. There is a mid-level structure and then a low-level structure. So a highly structured flexible seating will often mean that the teacher has a lot of control about where students are sitting. So you might have alternate options and you're open to allowing students to sit in those alternate options, but you control who sits where and for how long and when they do that. So you come up with a schedule, you decide who's going to sit where. You might have a conference with students and decide, okay, where will they want to sit? Where do they want to try out? Maybe you just simply rotate every student's name through your various choices in a week. And if they choose to sit there, great. If not, it goes to the next person. And you can just do a rotational schedule for where students sit. So one of the easiest ways is to get those old library pocket cards, put a student's name on each pocket, and get popsicle sticks, the thick ones preferably. Get a popsicle stick with your different flexible seating choices and simply just move the popsicle sticks along those pocket charts. And when the popsicle stick is in their in their little pocket chart or in their little library pocket, then they can sit there for that time period. And you decide as the teacher who rotates through. You can pull students out of that rotation if they can't handle it and put them back in. But the decision on who sits where is totally yours. And I would consider that to be high control. It also generally would mean that each student would have a home base. So they have a spot that they stay at. It's theirs. They own it. But they also have an alternative space for them to go to. The mid-level type of flexible seating is really where you're kind of in between your high and your low. So you are allowing students to give more voice and choice as to where they're sitting. So you may co-create the expectations on what flexible seating looks like with your students, that there will be rules and routines and a bit more structure, but they might have input on where they may sit. So if you operate tables, if you've got table groups, you might have a table group rotate to each center and say there's might be 2 seats in the couch area. If you have a small couch, there might be 2 seats in that area and there's 6 people at the table group. So between those 6 people, they need to decide who's going to work there that day. So there's a little bit more control in the hands of students. They might help you come up with the rules of who sits where, and you might want to consider what their needs are and listening to their own ideas about how they could structure that. I found in the past that students actually do come up with really good ideas of what that should look like. And when they have some of that control over what it could look like, if they've had a bit of experience in the past, they're much better at this. If it's new to you and new to students, I would totally go with a high level of control to start. But if students may have had a bit more experience with it, or you've maybe given it a shot before and you have some experience, then a mid-level structure is a great idea too. So for this one, you might have a chart with a rotation that you have come up with students. So table 1 sits at this center on Mondays, and table 2 sits at this center on Mondays, and table 3 has an alternative option for this center on Mondays. This is actually what happens in my classroom. I really am not ready for a really low structured flexible seating. Sort of, and I'll get to that in a minute. I still like there to be a little bit more control and structure. I do invite my students to come up with what the rules are and the norms and how they would like to rotate. So they've had choices in previous years where they had, say, 2 places that they could go as an alternate seat, and those were the only 2 places, and then they would rotate through as a group of people who are sitting at the white chairs. So I have flexible white chairs, and students would say, okay, there might be 10 students that said white chairs are my alternate seating spot, and they would rotate through there. This year, my students definitely wanted a schedule. They wanted the option of sitting everywhere in my classroom. So we came up with a schedule that would allow each table group to sit in one section per day. So they would have, there's 3 blocks. We did some math. There's 3 blocks a day, 6 people at each group. So for any independent work time during the first block, 2 of the 6 people would sit there. And the second block, it would be another 2 people. And the third block, it would be another 2 people. And that's how they decided they wanted to fairly allow each person to sit there. And then they also came up with veto rules where if no one was sitting there, somebody else could try it out, but the table group assigned could veto them out. They really got into coming up with these rules and figuring out what was going to work for them. And then we would check back in, and if it wasn't working, we might change it up. And there was a few times where we had to change some of those, especially those veto rules, because we needed to really talk about others monopolizing certain areas in our classroom. So that's medium level flexible seating. And it's definitely what I do because I still want a little bit of control in my own classroom. Low level flexible seating is really where you're getting into the Starbucks. Perhaps not everybody in the classroom has a home seat, has a home table or a home spot, Maybe they just come in the morning and sit wherever they feel comfortable, and there might not be a home base for them to sit in. They literally could come in the classroom, and Monday they might sit somewhere, and Tuesday they might sit somewhere else, and they literally get a choice all the time. Now, this might work for a lot of teachers. There are some days that I will allow this to happen. I might do glimmers of this. And although I do have a structure in place that I can fall back on in my classroom, there are a lot of independent work times as we get further into the year where I just let it kind of sort itself out. And I let the students really manage it. So it is a bit more of that low level because I've backed off completely on managing their flexible seating rules and choices. And they really have to take ownership there. So those are kind of the 3 different levels, and it really depends on your students, your own personality, and your own comfort level as to where you go. But at the end of the day, all 3 of those choices definitely are building into that shift in mindset that students get choice as to where they think they would work best. So those are some of the ways that flexible seating can look like, but what might that look like in your classroom? So there's been some great different strategies that I have seen. The one I use is the rotational chart. If you saw my Facebook post earlier this evening, you would have seen the rotational chart that I zoomed in to when I had a photo of my classroom. But it is a chart that says day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and then it has the table groups down the left column, and it just tells me which group on what day sits where. And it's posted in our classroom where every student can see it, and they can just reference that chart and know where their assigned flexible seating spot for their table group is. And that's worked out really well. So making a chart to display it. You could also, again, use that pocket chart. I've also seen the number charts where if every student in your classroom has a number, you just laminate a poster with a little sticky note sized box on this poster paper, and each number corresponds with a student. Somewhere on there, you could indicate who has flexible seating privileges and who doesn't. This is definitely something you want to use flexible seating as a not necessarily a reward, but a privilege that is in your classroom for students who can work independently and manage their time. Those that don't need a high level of under thumbness in order to get any work done. And I totally just made up under thumbness, but I think you know what I mean. But you want to somehow be able to manage who has that ability and who doesn't, especially in the beginning of the year, because a lot of students, if they're new to flexible seating, there will be some of your students that will take advantage of this as freedom, and they won't necessarily be able to manage their time. So there's twofold to this. One, you really need to be on top of students for managing their time. You need to give them time management strategies. We need to talk with our students about how they can effectively use their time and to self-assess whether or not a choice they made negatively impacted them, as well as you need to really focus on due dates and when things are due and making sure that students are able to meet those deadlines and to regulate their own behavior within the classroom so that they can meet those deadlines. Getting students to learn there are consequences for not handing things in, and there are, that we've got to be able to chunk our work down and manage that out, and really supporting students along that way is going to also need to go hand in hand with using flexible seating. Students will be easier to manage in terms of behavior, and they do get a lot more work done, but there are going to be students that are going to need a little bit more control at the back end to make sure that they are fulfilling their responsibilities as a student. And they generally all will be able to do that. It's just a matter of sometimes they need to learn from failure. And this happens often at the beginning, where if they don't meet their expectations, you pull back their ability to have flexible seating. They really like having flexible seating, so they earn that back by learning how to manage and chunk their time a little bit better. So it's a really great way to teach some learning skills about that as well. Another thing that I'm actually going to try for next year is to get one of those push lights from the dollar store, and I'm going to label it with the words flexible seating, and I'm going to have that posted on a wall in my classroom, and I will have it on when flexible seating is on, and when the light is off, it means that flexible seating is also off limits for that time. There definitely is a time and a place, because I do have home base for each one of my students. There is a time and a place where you want to have flexible seating on and you want to have flexible seating off. So I will have a push light next year. I've seen a lot of those as great ideas for other things, whether or not it's the washroom or the volume of their voice when they're talking. But I really like the idea of having an on-off visual reminder for students that is whether it's flexible seating. And the other thing you can do is simply just have a flip paper that sits on your board, and you flip it green or red or whatever colors that work for you in your classroom, so that students are aware of when they have flexible seating and when flexible seating needs to be turned off, because maybe the learning you're doing doesn't make sense for that. I also think it's really important for you to set rules and norms and to create an anchor chart for what flexible seating looks like. And if you have any information on flexible seating, then I think it's probably a good idea to make sure that you also have the rules and norms so that students can follow along there, that they have the ability to know what's expected of them. It's really explicit. It's posted. We've all agreed to it. I think that's a really important thing to do, so that it's very explicit for your students as to what flexible seating looks like in your classroom, what it should look like if you were to peek up from your guided reading with a small group and look at the flexible seating. What does that look like? And then really holding them accountable to that and removing that privilege of having flexible seating for those students that cannot handle having that kind of privilege. They work really hard to get it, which is why I think that's one of the biggest privileges in my classroom, is having the privilege to use flexible seating, and they work really hard to earn it. Another option I think is a great one is cards, and I have a photo for you here. This is a choice board for flexible seating. This is from a friend of mine, Happily Ever After. You'll find these cards on Teachers Pay Teachers. She's got little cards that are on her board, and it's magnets. So those are magnets I think you get from the dollar store. They're clear, and she has Sharpied over them with a student number, and students are selecting where they are sitting, and there's a limit for how many people can sit there. So you can put a limit for how many people are there. They can choose to sit in different places. So this is a little bit more student driven, a little bit less control, because they're choosing where they're going to sit. And she's got these, and they're really pretty, that she's made them there. So you can find those in her TPT store. I think they are a paid product, and I have no affiliation. I mean, I know her. She's a friend of mine, but I haven't told her that I'm talking about it tonight. But these are great if this is kind of the style that you're going for, is this is kind of the choice that you are looking to use in your classroom. Now, where to get flexible seating? Okay, the number one and the easiest thing is to ask your principal to buy flexible seating. However, you probably are under some pretty big budget cuts right now, and there probably isn't a lot of extra money. So number one, kids are really inventive. If you've got plastic chairs that your kids regularly sit on at their tables and desks, if they flip them upside down and they can use the underside of the seat as a little lean-to chair, and they can kind of sit there and lean on the back of their chair while sitting on the floor. You can get carpet squares as remnants or the sample carpets from carpet stores. I believe they still give those out every once in a while to schools. But if you call up a local carpet store and see if they have any, or if they're willing to save you some, those carpet squares are easy and often free for you to be able to use in your classroom. You can also get items from the dollar store, yoga mats, or little round carpets, or they're little like welcome mat carpets. You can grab those and students can take them and move them around the room, and they have an option of sitting on something maybe other than the floor. And those rugs are, if you use the rugs, they're great because you can throw them in the washing machine and wash them, because they do get kind of gross after a while. Mine definitely need to be washed. But you can get those at the dollar store for relatively inexpensive of a price, like $1 or $2 per little carpet circle. And yoga mats, they're $4 at the dollar store, but I will take a full-size yoga mat and cut it in half because they're little humans and they don't need a full-size yoga mat. So I will cut those yoga mats in half, and I can get half a yoga mat. It costs me $2. So $2 per seat is a pretty reasonable price for me. And I'm not buying this all at once. I just add to it kind of every year. I'll buy something different for the classroom. Thrift stores has been my number one source of furniture. The thrift stores in a can of paint is my go-to flexible seating option. So I'm not necessarily looking for fluffy or plush. I definitely am looking for hard wipeable surfaces that don't have a lot of cushioning in them, because I want to be able to clean it. So either IKEA or thrift stores, or IKEA products from thrift stores are often my option. Now, one of the great things, patio furniture, old patio furniture that's still in stable condition but may not look super pretty, can easily be fixed with a can of Rust-Oleum spray paint, especially the Rust-Oleum that's specifically designed to repurpose, say, plastic. But a can of spray paint, and if you find multiple items at a thrift store for probably pretty cheap, then you can make them all match magically, or match enough looking, and get them to match each other with a can of paint or some spray paint. And I find it's going in my classroom. I don't necessarily need the quality. I am not a great painter. I'm not allowed to paint anything in my house because I make a mess, and my attention to detail sometimes just simply isn't there. But in my classroom, I paint lots of things because it doesn't need to be perfect in my classroom. It just needs to be good enough, and that's fine. So I will paint the furniture that I can find at a thrift store all one color, so that everything looks cohesive and it looks like it matches, and it doesn't necessarily look like I got it all from a thrift store. I will also buy shower curtains because they're cheap fabric, and I'll buy shower curtains, and often I can find multiple shower curtains in the same color. I will find shower curtains and use my sewing machine and I'm not a great sewer either. I just happen to have a sewing machine because it's something that I have as an adult. I felt as though I needed one. But I can use my sewing machine, and I can sew a straight enough line that I can make a cover for, say, an ottoman or a pillow. So I can put a cover on top of something that doesn't match and use that in my classroom for some extra comfort. If I do have something plush in my classroom, like a pillow or a cushion, I do actually also cover them first in plastic, and then I cover them in fabric. And the fabric is always removable, so I'll just do kind of a slip cover and elastic it around the bottom so that it's cinched nice and tight, or put string around the bottom and do a drawstring around the bottom of my ottomans. And that allows me to make sure that I have everything matching. So what's underneath doesn't match, but on the outside it looks enough like it matches. And just don't look really closely at the stitching. There's the quality of the craftsmanship, because it's probably not there. But the 9-year-olds in my classroom, they don't care. And if the manufactured by me slipcover gets ruined, it's not the end of the world. But I will say the ones that I made for my ottomans have lasted 3 years, including time with an LTO. So, I mean, that's a pretty good durability in my books. Friends and family are also a great way. If you've got friends that are moving and purging, that's a great time to go and snap up any extra furniture that's light and easy to transport, as well as community moms groups. Sometimes if you just post on a community moms group certain things you're looking for, Someone might have something in their basement that they are happy to get rid of for a very small fee or even free just because you're willing to take it, and you can use that in your classroom. Solid wood if you can find items that are made out of wood instead of out of plastic or even melamine or fiberboard, that's going to be your better option. In a classroom, they're just more durable, and that's what we need. So I really like to go for solid wood when I can. I find if anything's melamine, it doesn't last very long. So I really do need to try to find solid wood. And another really great one, and it sounds a little sketchy, but apartment buildings at the end of the month often get rid of furniture. That might be a good place to try. Just make sure that the furniture is, again, wipeable and you can disinfect it and all of those things, but that's another great way. Facebook Marketplace is another one. So in my classroom, some of the furniture I have are 2 ottomans that I found at Value Village and recovered with 2 multicolored shower curtains. Those are 2. I have a coffee table from IKEA that I actually got at Value Village. I have 2 wooden Muskoka chairs that sit in my classroom that were returned because they were misassembled and there was screw holes in the wrong place, but they were sent to Value Village. Somebody got rid of them. I picked them up, and it doesn't bother me or my students that there are pilot holes in the wrong spots on the piece of wood. Those took a while to assemble. Thank you to my friend Sarah who helped me assemble them. But those have been great and really sturdy in my classroom. And I also last year picked up a very small couch from IKEA. I cannot remember the name of it, but the best thing about it is it's really just a piece of canvas that forms the seat, metal legs and a back. And I have a slip cover from IKEA that goes over top of it, and I can take it off at the end of the year and wash it, which is going to be very good because, again, they all need to be washed at this point. So one of the things I wanted to show you as well is sometimes with flexible seating, you want the ability to just pick new seats, or you want to randomize where they're sitting. Maybe you want to change seats. Maybe flexible seating for you in your classroom just means that you are flexible in how quickly and how frequently you are changing the seats in your classroom. So one of the things that you can use is a flexible seating classroom picture. What did I call it? I know I called it something. Well, now I can't even think of what the name file is. Classroom seating selector cards. That's what I called them. So on here, I have 6 different images. So there are 6 different images. And if you scroll down in the file, and this is free for you, by the way. I'm going to get you access to this. So you scroll down and you can give them a picture card, a word card. There's a number card, icons, sports, and each student gets one of these selector cards. Now, these selector cards correspond with a group card. So if you are grouping your students into groups, then you would put one of these group cards on each table. Or you would just print out, if maybe you don't have tables, you would simply just label their seats with a second matching selector card. So you would give one to the student and you put one on their desk. And then they choose these selector cards out of a basket. As say they walk in the door, they pick a selector card and then they go find their match. So for me, these little table cards are sitting on their table, and I will move them around so they're not always on the same table. And then they draw a selector card out of the basket, and then they just go find the match. And then they sit at their new seat. And then I have a look at where they're all sitting, and if I need to make some emergency moves for personality reasons, I do. But this is an easy and fun way. Sometimes I rack my brain far too much as to the perfect place to seat every kid. And sometimes it all honestly doesn't matter. But shaking it up every once in a while, this is a fun thing that I've done a couple of times with these selector cards. And the students find it a kick that sometimes they could, you know, get to sit with a whole bunch of friends that they think I normally wouldn't put them with. And sometimes when they are with their friends, they're like, oh, if I don't handle it, she's going to move me. So I better do a good job at sitting with these people so that I can move it. So I do often will switch people at the end after they've all sat down. If there's some emergency moves I need to make, I will definitely move them. But these are my classroom seating selector cards. Now, what I've done for you is I have thrown these up into my free resource library, and they are available to you. I figured out why some things weren't available last week, but they've all been updated. So I've just added these into the free resource library. So what you need to do to get access to these is you need to go to the following URL: www.madlylearning.com/free library. When you do that, you're going to be prompted to sign up. Okay, so here we go. So www.madlylearning.com/free library. So it will prompt you. Can you see it? Oh, you can. Perfect. It will prompt you to this page. So this is the login page. So if you go to and enter your full name and your email address, and then you create a password, and this will give you access. So instead of me having a password, I've changed it up so that you don't have to remember what my password is that I email you. This is a password that's just for you, and it's a bit more private for you to have access to this. So you will log in and sign up here and click the box there and hit sign up for free. And when you do that, you will receive an email from me almost instantly. So if you don't get it in your inbox, check your junk mail and spam mail, and it will thank you for signing up for it. And if you click the link in that email, it'll prompt you right in there, or it might even prompt you to, as soon as you've clicked sign up, give you access right away, right within this window. So that is what you are looking for, is this page, this page here, and you'll see that little pink notebook and my little books at the bottom. That is what you are looking for. So when you see that, you're in the right place. If you see what looks like my website, you're in the wrong place. And if you're having a hard time, just put it in the comments of this video and we will help you out to make sure that you get access to that. So if you're looking for my selector cards, you can sign up for those right now, and you can get access to those as well as lots of other things in that free resource library for all subjects and all things that we've talked about in the past on this show. So I hope that this talk tonight has helped you to think about what you want to do and for next year. And if you do want to add flexible seating in your classroom, I think it's a great opportunity for you to differentiate your environment in your classroom to allow for more movement and flexibility. And I think that's a great thing for all students. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that the rest of your week goes smoothly and you get all the things on your to-do list done and you are ready and able to enjoy your upcoming long weekend, so that you can rest and relax and recuperate over your summer. And I will be back not next Monday, but the following Monday to talk to you again about teaching with inquiry. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you not next week, but the week after. Bye for now.